What happens when America's most iconic chipmaker loses $18.8 billion in a single year, fires its CEO, and becomes practically irrelevant in the AI revolution? You bring in a 65-year-old venture capitalist who's never run a hardware company, give him the keys to an $87 billion disaster, and watch him do something absolutely insane. Just 6 months later, Intel's stock is up 90%. Nvidia, their biggest competitor, just invested $5 billion in them. And the US government took a 10% stake for nearly $9 billion. This is the story of how Intel went from the brink of collapse to posting a $4.1 billion profit last week, and the VC playbook that made it happen. Let's rewind to understand just how badly Intel had fallen. For decades, Intel was the name in semiconductors. Their chips powered the PC revolution. At one point, they controlled 80% of the CPU market. But then they missed everything. They missed mobile computing when the iPhone was launched in 2007. They missed cloud. They missed AI. Meanwhile, Nvidia became a $4 trillion company building chips that actually power artificial intelligence. By 2024, Intel's market share had collapsed to just 60%. AMD was eating their lunch in PCs and data centers. Their revenue dropped over 30% between 2021 and 2024. But the real disaster? Former CEO Pat Gelsinger bet the company on a pivot to contract chip manufacturing, Intel Foundry Services. The idea was to open Intel's factories to outside customers and compete with TSMC. It was a bloodbath. Foundry losses ballooned from $7 billion in 2023 to $13 billion in 2024. Major customers never materialized. The stock plunged 60% in 2024. Intel posted its first annual loss since 1986. In December 2024, the board fired Gelsinger. Enter the VC. This is where our story gets interesting. Intel didn't hire another chip industry lifer. They went completely left field. In March 2025, they announced Lip-Bu Tan as CEO. Now, who is this guy? Tan is a legendary venture capitalist who founded Walden International in 1987, one of the most successful semiconductor VC firms ever, bridging Silicon Valley and Asia. He's backed companies like Omnivision, Umbrella, and Montage Technology. He also spent 12 years as the CEO of Cadence Design Systems, turning around the chip design software company. Forbes named him one of the 50 top venture capitalists. But here's the twist. Tan had actually been on Intel's board and quit in August 2024 because he disagreed with the company's direction. 8 months later, they convinced him to come back as the CEO. At 65, with a $1.1 billion personal fortune, Tan didn't need this job at all. But he saw something everyone else missed. And he brought a VC's mindset to a company that desperately needed one. Cut the fat, focus on core strength, secure strategic capital, and move fast. The turnaround playbook. Tan moved like a startup founder, not a corporate dinosaur. Step 1, radical cost cutting. Within weeks, he announced Intel would cut over 20% of its workforce, making the company leaner and faster. He implemented a policy of no blank checks. Every dollar had to be justified. He flattened management hierarchies so engineering teams reported directly to him. This is straight out of the startup playbook. Remove bureaucracy, increase speed. Step 2, sell non-core assets. In April, Tan sold 51% of Altera, Intel's programming chip business, to Silver Lake for $4.46 billion. Intel had bought Altera for $17 billion in 2025. So this was a massive write-down. But here's the genius. Altera was generating $1.54 billion in revenue, but losing $615 million in operating losses. It was a distraction. Tan cut it loose to focus on core products and free up cash. Step 3, secure strategic investors. This is where Tan's VC network became invaluable. In August 2025, the US government converted grants into equity, taking a 10% stake worth $8.9 billion at $20.47 per share. This wasn't just money, it was a strategic endorsement that Intel was critical to American semiconductor independence. Then came the shocker. In September, Nvidia, Intel's biggest competitor, invested $5 billion for approximately 4% of Intel at $23.28 per share. Jensen Huang, Nvidia CEO called it a historic collaboration and said the return on investment would be fantastic. The deal, Intel would build custom x86 CPUs for Nvidia's data centers and integrate Nvidia's RTX GPUs into Intel's AI PCs. Nvidia would become a very large customer of Intel CPUs. SoftBank also invested $2 billion. In total, these three deals brought Intel $16 billion in capital. Step 4. Refocus on what works. Tan zeroed in on Intel's core strength, x86 processors for PCs and data centers, and pivoted towards AI integration. He hired three top engineering executives from Cadence, Rain AI, and Google to focus on AI chip architectures. He personally met with 22 potential customers in a single day, leveraging his unmatched semiconductor network. The results. Last Thursday, October 23rd, 2025, Intel reported Q3 earnings. The numbers were stunning. Revenue $13.7 billion, up 3% year over year, beating estimates by 4%. Net income $4.1 billion, Intel's first profit in 6 quarters, reversing the $16.6 billion loss from a year earlier. Adjusted EPS $0.23, crushing expectations of just $0.01. That's a 2,200% beat. The PC chip business, Client Computing Group, posted $7.5 billion in revenue, up 9% year over year. AI PCs were driving demand. Intel's foundry losses narrowed by 2%. Small progress, but still progress. The stock plunged 7 to 8% after hours. Since Dan took over in March, Intel's stock is up 90% in 2025 after losing about 60% in 2024. CEO Lip-Bu told investors, quote unquote, "We are on the journey to rebuild Intel. Our turnaround strategy is taking hold." Now, some key lessons for startups and VCs. So, what can we learn from here? Lesson 1. Sometimes you need an outsider. Intel didn't hire another chip executive. They brought in someone with a completely different perspective, a VC who understood capital allocation, focus, and speed. Sometimes the best turnaround artist isn't from your industry. Lesson 2. Strategic capital is better than any capital. Dan didn't just raise money, he secured strategic investors who brought validation, customers, and ecosystem integration. The US government stake signaled national importance. Nvidia's investment brought instant credibility and a major customer. For startups, your cap table is your network. Choose investors who open doors, not just write checks. Lesson 3. Focus is everything. Intel was trying to do everything: PC, servers, foundry services, FPGAs, AI accelerators. Dan cut Altera and doubled down on core x86 processors with AI integration. As a startup, ask yourself, what are we world class at? Everything else is a distraction. Lesson 4. Speed of execution matters. In 6 months, Dan cut 20% of staff, sold a major division, secured $16 billion in strategic capital, hired key executives, and returned to profitability. Startups move fast. Intel hadn't moved fast in decades. Dan brought startup speed to a 125,000 person company. Lesson 5. The comeback is possible. 6 months ago, analysts were writing Intel's obituary. Today, it's one of the best performing tech stocks of 2025. No company is far too gone if you have the right leader, the right strategy, and the courage to make the painful decisions. Intel's turnaround isn't complete. They're still fighting uphill battles in AI and foundry. But what Lip-Bu Tan has accomplished in 6 months is nothing short of remarkable. He took a $90 billion lesson in what happens when great companies lose focus and turned it into a masterclass in strategic pivots, capital allocation, and execution velocity. If you're building a startup or investing in one, the story has everything you need to know about comebacks, focus, and the power of strategic capital. For more such deep dives on startup strategy, venture capital, and the stories behind billion-dollar companies, hit that subscribe button. We'll break down one trending topic like this every single week, giving you the insights that matter for founders and investors. Drop a comment. What's the boldest turnaround strategy you've ever seen? Let's discuss. See you next week. VC10X.